It's nice to talk to people.
It's always good to talk to. That's true. Okay. First of all, today we learned Lili Nishmat Avigdor Chayavram Ben Meir Tzvi V'Rachalea. Got it right this time. Also, Lili Nishmat Abigail Malka Bat Chana Yehudit. Yichona Livracha. Shamot Shehevan Aliyah. In the little book, we are on page 144. We are starting with the paragraph that starts with the words Ach Hahit Bonen. And we'll tell you what's going on here with Ach Hahit Bonen. The topic we're dealing with today, I don't know if we'll finish it or not. Let me just set this up here. Sorry, 1 second. Forgot to do something. And this mute. Yes. We're on page 144.
Yeah, I thought we were.
It's chapter 23, and we are on Achahit Bonen. We got into just the beginning of the chapter last time. Okay, put this here so it doesn't blow away. Okay, so we're talking about the things that a person needs to do in order to maintain, to acquire, to achieve, and maintain this is good, thanks. To maintain a level of humility. And it has to be done in a number of ways, and one of which has to do with your mind. You have to, the way you train your mind, how you think. And one of the things he's going to do today, something that I am very fond of, which is this concept of what's called imagery. We're going to come to that soon. What does it mean you have to be introspective? It has to be in many things. Is one thing that's mentioned in Pirkei Avot by Akav ben Hallel. If you go to a Levaya, you'll hear this very often being said as they're walking to the grave. Da me'ayin bata v'tipa srucha ulana ta olech b'mkom afar ima v'tole'a lifnei mi ata etid litain din v'cheshbon lifnei melech malchei melachim hakadosh baruch hu. Where do you come from? From what's called in English a putrid drop. And where are you going to? To play to the earth of just, gross, the grossness. And before whom you will stand in the future to give the din v'cheshbon for God. Not too frightening. He says, every one of these should make it stop and think to those who are full of themselves. Dude, you are nothing. Think about where you come from. Think about what your life is. Think about where you're going. And you're going to be so full of yourself. They help with anava. When a person looks at the minimal amount of the fact that he's chomri, he's physical, and the lowliness of where he comes from, he has no reason to be full of haughtiness. He should be embarrassed. What is this similar to? A person who was I don't know what the word is, not a shepherd, but a shepherd for pigs. And he somehow became the king, a swineherder. All right, cool. It does say that in English, a swineherder, also known as the people who live in Chawara. And he became king. He ate as long as while he's sitting on the throne, he still remembers where he comes from. It's impossible for him to be all full of himself. We say this as we hear the donkey braying in the background. Where is he? Yeah, he's right there with all his herd. Yeah, they're eating. Also, you have to remember that the way the world is, there is death in the world. And when a person passes away, they return to the earth. How much more so a person would be capitulate to, I guess would be a good word, be subservient to his pride and forget that he is, like, just think about it. Like, imagine for a moment that I thought, and I'm not, I thought I was a great scientist. I'm not. I mean, I like science, but I'm not a scientist. And then I am put in a room with, I'm so proud of myself. Look at what I've done in science. And then if I were able to sit down with Albert Einstein and said, do you know who I am? Yeah, you're a little nothing. You're a fleck. You're a pal. Okay. What's there to be so? Again, I know I said it, but it's important to say there's nothing wrong with being proud of yourself. Don't be full of yourself. Now this paragraph. I want to read a little bit slowly because I think it's the imagery here is beautiful. I actually years and years ago had a little note on the side that wrote Shabbat Shuvah with a question mark. If I want to use that as a basis for a talk, which I still might one day. When a person stops and thinks and he imagines in his heart, think about for a moment the moment that you are going to come into the Beit Din, into the courtroom in Shamayim. The moment he'll be standing and being seen before God. HaKadosh v'Tahor, God who is completely pure, holy, surrounded by his phalanxes of angels who only do his bidding. They have they're true also, but not a mum is a blemish. They don't have any blemish, but you're right, they don't have any choice. Okay. And he is standing among them. I lost the place. There we go. Garua, pachut, v'nivzeh mitzad atzmo. He's a low person. He's not such a good thing. I'm not going to translate exactly. Tameh, he's impure. M'go'al mitzad ma'asav. He's despicable, disgusting because of all of his actions. This is really a pick-me-up. When I come back to review this paragraph in a minute, I'll explain it a little bit more. Herim rosh, he'll lift up his head. Hayelo pitchom peh. Will he have anything to say in his defense? And he'll be asked, hey, where's your mouth now, buddy? Where's your pride? And all that grandeur and all that honor you were given. That when you were in your world that you carried with you. Well, dude, where's all that pride now? What is he going to answer? What's he going to respond to the rebuke he will get? If for just 1 minute you could imagine this, this imaginary picture in your mind, you would run as far away as possible from being haughty and would never return to it again. Okay, what's he saying? There are many movies where you see an imaginary moment of a person passes away and how they're taken away to Gehenna or brought before a heavenly court. Probably to me, one of the more scary ones was, if you've seen the movie Ghost, I saw it many, many years ago. I saw it in the theater, actually. When the person in the movie dies, and what happens to them is they're so to speak, their neshama is leaving them. It's creepy stuff. Anyways, we don't need the movie Ghost. We don't need any of those things. We have one paragraph in this book that should be enough to make a person stop and think for a minute. We talk about Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. We talk about the Olam Ha'emet, the world of truth. We talk about Yemot HaMashiach. But the truth is, the Rambam tells us very simply. People say, oh, the time of the Mashiach, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Rambam says, look, guys, maybe. No one's ever been in the next world to tell us for real. No one's ever come back and said, this is really what happens in the next world. No one can really tell us what's going to happen in the time of Mashiach, except for what we may know from a Masorah, from tradition. So I can't really tell you exactly, but here's in general what he says. So we don't tend to necessarily put ourselves in a position, except maybe Yom Kippur. We kind of have this feeling, especially by Kol Nidre, or Yeshiva Shel Mala, Yeshiva Shel Mata, right? Al Dat HaMakom, Al Dat. But in general, people don't really think this way. I think for two reasons. One, it's not something we want to think about because it's really scary. And the other is it's not how the average person tends to think. You want to go through life Just, I want to do my best. And what's going to happen after 120 years is going to happen. I got to do my best. But he's telling us here, he doesn't say this anywhere else in the book. This is the only time he says this, that when it comes to ga'ava, you have to be exceedingly careful and have this imaginary moment in your mind of standing before God, the kisei hakavod, right? And picturing in your mind what it is you're going to say. I quoted, I forgot who I heard this from first. It says, imagine somebody is religious and then becomes non-religious, or wasn't religious at all, but they're very well aware. Not talking about someone who doesn't know. Someone is aware. We're on page 122. Sorry, top 123. And it gave it up. And let's just take Birkat Hamazon, benching. And so after 120 years, this girl goes before the Kisei HaKavod. Hashem said, okay, my book says you ate 9,474 times bread. You didn't wash, you didn't bench. Explain yourself. Well, God, I wasn't on that program. I was in a different program. Okay. Now we all smile, we laugh, and think that's how ridiculous, but that's pretty much the choice. So when he's saying here, you come before Hashem, Hirim Rosh, he raises his head, Hayelo Pitron Peh. Is he going to have anything to respond when he's actually standing before Hashem and being told specifically about pride? We're talking only right now about pride. Dude, we're full of yourself now. Go ahead. Tell me what a great mathematician you are. Yeah. I can tell you pi up to 175 trillion points, says God. Can you do that? No. I have a student who is now going into 11th who can do pi up to 500 something places. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's actually not a matter of brilliance, it's a matter of memory. It doesn't make you brilliant. But I want to read something to you, something that I wrote. In the second book of Piyutim that I wrote, I actually write about this, not so much in terms of pride, but the imaginary moment of coming before the Kisei HaKavod. Okay, I'm getting all nervous here. Okay, I'm going to read it once without translating, and I'm going to go back and read it and explain. It's called Beheref Ayin, the blink of an eye. Beheref Ayin omed b'shafir zevulav, pachad, kishoro'eh hashofet, v'gam shiluchav. Kolot uvrakim, usrafim omdim mima'al, higia ha'et la'anot, al kol ma'al, ומעל. אל מי אנוסה לעזרה ביום פקודה, ארום בזער בינתי ומלא חרדה. הספר נפתח והמכתב מכתב ידי, אוי לי מיום הדין, לכלום נחשב נדודי. בצלך תסוכוני, אני רק אנוש, עשה עמדי חסד ותימנע מלאנוש. Means as follows. In the blink of an eye, I stand in the heavenly sphere. I'm filled with fear as I see the judge, God, and all of his ministering angels, just like what it says here in this paragraph. There's sounds, tremendous sounds, lightning and thunder, and his ministering angels standing above. The time has come to answer for every trespass in my life. To whom will I turn for help on this day of judgment? Naked with almost no knowledge, I am filled with fear. The book is open, and the writing of the book is my handwriting, meaning it says they say that after 120 years that Hashem's going to have everything written down, and you're going to have to sign, yep, that was me, Zev Meir ben Rabbi Yamin Sima. That's me. The book is open and is written with my handwriting. Woe is to me from judgment day. All my actions are for nothing. Cover me, or put me in your shade and cover me. I am only human. Please do a chesed with me and do not give out punishment. It doesn't work in English as far as the rhyme. So when I was reviewing this morning, I was literally about to walk out there. Oh, I wrote something like that. So I wanted to share that with you. So this first section here is the hitbonenut of the person who's a Baal Gava, a person who is haughty, and this imaginary moment of, okay, what am I going to say when I stand before God? Now, we can extrapolate from that it's not just till he gets to chapter 23 that he mentions this idea, but it's any point in our life that You could wait till Elul. That's fine, but it's nice to do it every day. Have some imaginary moment or moment of an imagination, imaginary moment, a moment of an imagination of, 120 years from now, not just from the beginning of your life, another 120, just added on 120 years to everybody's life. And what are you going to say? What are you going to say when Hashem says to you, I don't know, why'd you give this up? Or why did you do it? Like, you're middle davening and all you're doing is you're thinking about your day. You're trying to, whatever the mitzvah might be, you're doing this mitzvah and you weren't even there. What are you going to say? The answer, you made me, I'm human, right? We're not meant to be perfect. It is impossible. Hashem knows that, but we are supposed to do better than we are doing, no matter where a person's holding in life. Hasheni, the second way of working on the idea of getting rid of the midah of anava, the bad character trait, life. Things change in life. There's no guarantee in life. A person who's rich can very easily become poor. And a person who's a ruler can become a slave. By the way, that's not necessarily, it's meant literally, but it can mean figuratively as well. A person who's honored become disgraced. With no names, we know people who founded certain organizations in this country or wrote certain books and were held in great esteem, and they went to their next world. Whatever, no comment. If you can easily return to that low level, person who grew up poor and suddenly after working and really putting the effort in becomes very rich. Just as well as he became rich, he become poor again. I'll read to you in a minute, Tfilat Chana. We'll come to that in a second. But we refer to this once a year at least, where one night a year. Oh, that's good. That's 3 times. It's during the daytime. One night, that's the hint. One night a year, we say something that reminds us of this idea. And it's also a difference in the way we say the word, depending on how you grew up. The night of the Seder, we say ha lachma anya or ke halachma anya. This is like the bread of affliction. This is the bread of affliction. And if you look in many Haggadahs, it will tell you that the idea being that, look, we were poor. We were rich. Why are we eating the poor man's bread? Because this is what we used to be like. It's this reminder. We could go backwards at any time. So I want to read to you for a moment. As soon as I get it up on my phone. Whoops. Okay, let me call it back up. Okay, here it is. Okay. There are people, myself included, who read these 11 psukim every morning. It's from Shmuel Aleph, Perek Bet. It's known as Tfilat Chana. Chana, who didn't have any children at the beginning, goes to, she davens Hashem, and the story takes place, of course, by the Mishkan in Shiloh. We learn a lot of halachot about tefillah from here. I'm going to read part of it. I'm going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to translate part of it, which is germane to our topic. Vatitpalel Chana tomar alat libi badonai rama karni badonai achav pi alevai ki samachti bishoatecha. Ein kadosh kadonai, no one's holier than God. Kein biltecha, vein tzur kelohenu, and there's no one besides God. There's no rock like our God. Al tabu tedavru gvoa gvoa yitzei atak mipichem. Don't talk anymore with lofty pride. Let no arrogance cross your lips. For Hashem is an all-knowing God. By him, actions are measured. The bows of the mighty are broken, and the faltering are girded with strength. Men once sated must hire out for bread. People who had lots and lots of money, who could eat whatever they wanted, now they got to go begging. Men once hungry, hunger no more. And those who were beggars and had to go looking for food, they aren't hungry anymore. They have. While the barren woman bears 7, the mother of many is forlorn. Adonai me'mitu m'chayeh morid she'ol vaya'al. Hashem deals death and gives life. He casts down into Sheol, which is Gehinnom, and raises up. Next pasuk is the one I really want to focus on for a moment. Adonai morishu ma'ashir mashpil af meromem. Hashem makes the poor and makes rich. He casts down and also uplifts. There's a couple more pasukim, but I'm going to come to this pasuk. I've mentioned this before, I think. I have a friend, I won't say where, who was, sounds like Eicha a little bit, but Eicha is more of a dirge. It's like, look where we are. This is the acknowledgement that everything comes from Hashem. The fact that someone's wealthy, that someone's poor, that's all in the hands of Hashem. Now, what we do with it and how we use it, and that's up to us, of course. But so I had this friend who was very wealthy. I'm really wealthy. Until something happened, and he got sued by another religious Jew. Wiped him out. It went from one of these McMansions to a renter in a small house. And his attitude and his wife's was absolutely fantastic. I had it from Hashem. I don't have it now. That's from Hashem. Maybe I'll have it again. I don't know. There was a man, he passed away in Chicago, Dr. Walder. He got in on the ground floor of new technology many, many years ago. There was something brand new that most people never heard of. It's 3 letters. It's called DNA. We founded a company called DNA Technologies, which was literally at the beginning of the whole discovery of DNA and what it is. He became a multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire. Did not grow up religious. And he understood that what he had was from Hashem. And I can tell you that firsthand. There was a rally in Washington, D.C. many years ago that people, it was actually April 15th. Remember, it's tax day. People were asked to come from all over the country to protest some certain things about the U.S. government's policy and Israel. And I tried, and it was going to be like in and out. You go to fly into Washington and come back. I tried to get a group together to go. And we ended up with a group of like 50, 60 people. It was amazing. It was an absolutely amazing day. Yes. I even tried chartering a plane, actually. You might have been.
Yeah, I drove that.
Yeah. I'd have to think about it, probably around 2005, 2006.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember my sister in CA.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, of course. Well, there were buses, hundreds and hundreds of buses. People flew in we flew into Baltimore. We took I don't know what it's called, the train, but there's a name, the Rapid something or other. No, wasn't Amtrak. It was it was a rapid transit thing, but I don't remember what it's called. It's a name like in Chicago, the L. You're right. It was all blocked off. It was magnificent. And I was probably on the Mall of Washington for a half an hour, in and out. Anyways, so what happened was I was at the rally, and a guy who worked for Dr. Walder, Alav Shalom, came over to me, and he brought me an envelope. And he gave me an envelope. It was made out to the shul I was the rabbi at for $5,000. Nice. Yeah. So, what's this? He says, Dr. Walder heard that you were, instrumental in making a group in the Israel activism and bringing people to Israel. He wants you to continue doing more. Okay. I never met him. He's just giving money. He said, Dr. Walder's belief is as follows. As quickly as God gave me my money is as quickly as he could take it away. So I need to give it away as fast as I can to tzedakah. So, wow. He's long gone, unfortunately. He died of cancer, I believe. He did. He gave money to all over. Yeah. To Israel causes. Yeah. No. He was amazing in the way his tzedakah. Yes. You find that often also among the non-religious who are very philanthropic. Leave it to their pets and leave it to the symphony and they leave it to, yeah, unfortunately. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do, but don't, but it does. But so does Yudan Shomron. So that recognition, that's what he's talking about now. Recognizing that what you have is mina shamayim. And we talked about this not long ago here and in the Tefillah class, that we also believe that whatever money you're supposed to have at the end of the year, meaning the end of Elul, is already set at the beginning of Tishrei. So if that's the case, why do we daven? So we talked about that, because plus any money you spend for smachot, money you spend for Shabbatot and Chagim, that doesn't go in that cheshbon. So if a person's meant to have 10,000 shekel in the bank at the end of the year, then even if they spend 100,000, well, hopefully you'd have that to spend and not borrow and hack up your eyeballs. That's not counted. That won't affect the 10,000 shekel amount at the end of the year. But what you do with your money is up to you. But where you are in life, you're on the top of the game and top of the pile, or unfortunately not. Hashem Morishu Ma'ashir. Continuing in the paragraph. God forbid, there's so many illnesses that could come to a person. God forbid, a person, he's going to have to start, he gets into trouble. He doesn't have his health. He needs to go asking people for help, for money, for whatever it might be. It's not going to be, it wouldn't be easy for someone who's like always giving orders. How many difficult things that might happen in a person's life. It happens sometimes where people are, like they look down their nose at somebody or at their community, and suddenly they find themselves in a position like, I need your help. That happens in interpersonal relationships as well. You don't treat someone very nicely, but then it turns out that person you didn't treat so nicely is the president of an organization where your kid's looking for a job, right? And now you need to use a little bit of that protectia. By the way, those things I said all those years, come on, bygones be bygones. No, okay? So if you're a good person, the recipient of that request, then yes, bygones should be bygones. We talked about that. It's talking about just like overlook things that were done to you and all, unless there's something that's serious, obviously. But he's saying, like, you might be, not you, when I say you, I don't mean God forbid any of you. Y'all. When a person is in a position of authority, and they lord it over and they think they're God's gift and humanity and all, Hashem that's a recipe for God saying, I'll show you who's boss. I've said before, even a person doesn't believe necessarily in an ayin hara, that person will be very hard pressed to drive 100 kilometers an hour on Kvish 6 and say out loud, I've never been in a car accident, right? It's just bad mojo. They're not going to do it. I've actually had this discussion. People say, ayin hara, I don't believe in any of that stuff. I said, but would you be willing to do this? No. I said, why not? Well, just give me the creeps. Okay, so you do believe. By the way, it says, I gave a class a few years ago on ayin hara. It says a person who doesn't believe in ayin hara, it doesn't affect them. So whatever, you can take that for what you want. These things, person being sick, God forbid, and needing help from somebody who maybe he looked down on, a person being in a position of richness and becoming poor, all these things we see daily. It's worthwhile for the person to remove himself from his heart any haughtiness and to clothe himself in humility. And furthermore, you think about your responsibility and your requirement before God, and how far away, how much you've left and haven't done right, and how much you've done in a poor way. So much more, how much more so a person would be embarrassed from the way he's working and treating Hashem and his mitzvot, and will not be proud of himself, full of pride. Most people would be if you ask the following question, and don't anybody answer this, it's just in here. Rate yourself honestly on your avodat Hashem on a scale 1 to 10. 10, you're like a tzaddik yesod olam, and number 1, you're whatever. Okay, where would you rate yourself? First of all, most people will be a lower number than other people would rate them, but you're being honest with yourself. So if I think that, I'm Mr. Rich guy here and I'm so important and I'm the CEO and I have 10,000 employees that have to answer to me and I can fire some of the women, and they say, okay, great, very nice. Now tell me, you have Avodat Hashem, how are you? I'm okay. Before God, when you come before God, your answers are going to be not just if you dealt faithfully in business, did you set time for Torah? Here, let's take a look at all your actions in your lifetime. Okay, have a seat. I'll have eternity. Please sit. I told you my vision of Gehinnom is, yeah? I told you what I picture it. You're in a movie theater. This flies. By the way, you understand why one of the nicknames for the Yetzirah is this Baal Zavuv, Beelzebub in English, because the Zavuv it never gives up, right? So I'm sitting in a movie theater and everybody I know is in the theater. On the screen is a movie of my life from the moment I'm born to the moment I'm not here. Not only is it a movie, but it's everything I said and thought. So everyone would know exactly what I said about people and thought about people. That's my version of Gehenna. Okay? Doesn't mean it's real. It's enough to keep me, hopefully, in check. Yeah, the straight and narrow. Okay. So when you think about these things, about, you do a true cheshbon nefesh, where are you holding in life vis-a-vis your relationship with Hashem? Okay. It's good for two things. Number one, it should push you to do better. And number two, it should push you to think like, what's it going to be? What am I going to do with my life? Why? The whole reason, like, why are we here? What are we here for? I ask myself that all the time when I go into the kitchen. Why did I come in here? Why am I here? Probably to eat. And furthermore, it says in the Yirmiyahu, Shamoa Shamati Ephraim mitkoded, after I have repented, I knew regret. After I understood, I hit my leg. I'm ashamed and degraded. What does that mean? You can only really fully understand how foolish you are in being haughty once you've done the proper tshuva, once you've tried to roll it back. And that's true with pretty much anything. To not really know what you've had or where you were holding until you don't have it anymore. But go back to Pesach again to the Seder. Rabban Gamliel used to say, Kol shelo amar shlosha dvarim elu b'Pesach, whoever doesn't say the following three things on Pesach, lo yatsa yedei chovato, is not fulfilled his obligation, ve'elu hen, and these are them, Pesach, matzah, umaror. So first of all, just as a digression from a digression, what chovah? What requirement have you not fulfilled? Okay, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. You can look it up. You can figure it out yourself. Okay, but these are one of the things we say and never realize that the order is wrong. Pesach is the Karban Pesach, symbolic of freedom. Matzah, symbol of going out quickly. Maror is bitterness. The bitterness came first. Should be maror, Pesach, u'matzah, or at least maror, matzah, u'pesach. Why is maror third? An answer is that the bitterness was so bad they didn't even realize how bad they had it until they tasted freedom. Until they tasted freedom, they didn't realize how maror their lives really were. And therefore, Rabban Gamliel puts it potentially third on the list. And that's what he's saying here too. Until you really start to roll it back and step out of yourself and think about it, do a cheshbon nefesh, you don't even realize how deep in you are. You should always be introspective on this. To realize you're only human. Your mind is limited. And we don't use the majority of our brain, by the way. And I know some who are really good at that too. They're machmir not to use most of their brain. And the majority of how many mistakes he makes. And sometimes he's more close to making a mistake than actually having true knowledge. What does that mean? That a person who doesn't learn enough, a person who doesn't even, let me change the way I say this. I am surprised sometimes by the questions I get, because I'm surprised that someone or some people even realize that there's a question. Let's say, for example, you take your fleshik fork, your basari fork, you stick into hot milk. Okay, there's a potential problem there. Okay, I hope. If not, see me tomorrow. We'll talk. It's not potential. Okay, so they know there's a problem. But when you I used this example before. You borrow someone's car for a week, and it was half full, not half empty, half full with gasoline, and you give it back in a full tank of gas. You might have a problem there, something called rebate of interest, maybe. So I get a call like, do I have to give a full tank? I have a half a tank. I pay. So I say to myself, like, cool. People realize sometimes that there's like an actual question there. So it's not that a person may be ignorant, and maybe when I said ignorant, I don't mean it negative. It just means they don't know the rules, but they don't even necessarily know there's an issue. Like, really, that's a problem? I didn't know that. So it's more closely saying that people who think of so much of themselves that they may make, when it comes to the way they act in Torah mitzvot, they're closer to making mistakes than really having the true knowledge of halacha. Okay, therefore, Yira tamid mi'asakana hazot. You should always be afraid of this danger. Yivakesh l'mod tamid mikol adam. You should always try to seek to learn from people. Lishmoa tamid leitzat pen yikasher. Listen always to different people's advice, lest you trip up. Umash amru zichronam livracha. I love this line. I'll explain it. It says in Avot, Pirkei Avot, Ezeu chacham halomen mikol adam. Now we know that there's a number of pithy statements that are made using the beginning of the words. Who is smart, who is wise, and one is aroet hanolad. We're not going to get to that now, but alomed mikol adam. You learn from everybody, and that's the truth. Doesn't say you can learn from your teachers, your parents, your siblings, your kids. Kol adam. Everyone has something to teach. What does that mean? That doesn't mean necessarily someone's going to come over to my house and open a book and start teaching me something, which I hope they will. That's fine anytime. But it means the way someone acts, talks, responds to well, here's a word I never get to use, vicissitudes of life. When's the last time you ever used that word? Okay, really. A little ding goes off for they think $100. That's right. And the duck comes down. That's right. When you can take a lesson, by the way, good and bad. I once was at a lecture. I'm not exactly sure what it was called in the States, and it was terrible. The speaker was horrid. Someone came over to me and said, "Did you like it?" I said, "Very much." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah. I learned so much of what not to do." You can learn, what not to do from people also. Also important. By the way, kids are some of the best teachers because they ask great questions that you may never have thought of. That's why it says, I've learned more from my students than anybody else. I've learned, and it's true. Having been in education for 25 years now, formally and even more informally, I can tell you, it's not just kids ask the darndest questions. Thank you, our link letter. But it also, they look at things in a very different tamim way, very pure, innocent kind of question. And I will make it my point if I have a student that does that. First of all, to tell them it's a great question and not just to dismiss it. And then, depending on the age of the kid, I also, in front of them, call their parent or send them a voice note saying, "You're not going to believe this question I just got. This is fantastic." So it encourages more questions, but also means I learned something. So a person who's wise, I'm not saying I'm wise. I'm just saying I try to put this in practice on occasion and really try to learn from everybody. Whoever listens to advice is a chacham. Now, does that mean any advice? Right? Someone gives you advice. What you should do right now, sell your house and buy shares in some timeshare in Greece. Okay, the guy said, listen to everyone's advice. I'm going to do it. The only advice you have to listen to is that after this, you're going to give 10% of all your wealth and put me in your wills. But other than that, there's no other advice I have for you. It means you take counsel with somebody. You cannot know everything. It's impossible. You cannot be well-versed in everything. And often you're too close to a situation to make a decision. Sometimes you need the counsel could be your spouse. Counsel could be your child, a relative, a neighbor, a therapist, a rabbi, your accountant, anybody, somebody. You can't make all your life decisions 100% by yourself. I don't believe you can. There are some things that only you can make the decisions on. What I do often when people ask me for advice on things, with very, very, very rare exceptions, I never tell them what to do. I'll tell them, look, here's the situation, here's different outlooks, here's different ways. Sometimes it is black and white. You need to say what you got to say, but not always, especially if it could go either way. I say, look, I can't tell you what to do. Here's how I see it. And I think that's a good approach sometimes also. Some people need to be told what to do. You have to give them a path. And some, not so much. I've asked the following questions. Many people over the years, they'll come to me with a question, problem, an issue. And I say, okay, let me ask you the following. Are you here because you already made your decision and you want me to validate it? Or you really want my input and to see which way to go? So I said, wow, that was pretty insightful. So I said, because I can tell sometimes the way a person asks a question that they've already made the decision. They just don't know if it's okay to make that decision. So, and by the way, either way is fine. That's fine. But what's the whole point? You need to talk to people. You need to ask advice. Talk to yourself too. Talk to Hashem. That's the one piece of advice that people forget to take, is to ask Hashem, right? Ask Hashem for help. That can be that maybe you'll get the right idea. It'll give you some clarity. It'll put you in the hands of somebody who can help. But ask. Don't ever be embarrassed to say, I don't know how to deal with this. Because that itself is humility. Thinking you can do everything by yourself, that's haughtiness. Because we can't. That's not how Hashem created us. We need each other. That's why there's no word in Hebrew that's one letter. The letters represent Am Yisrael. There's no word in Hebrew that's one letter, because no Jew should be by himself or herself. You always need another person. All right, on that happy note, have a wonderful day. And next week, as far as I know, we're on. Let me just double check. Also, I turn my phone on. And Rhonda, again, thank you as always for having this, hosting it here. I don't say that often enough. 28th. I gotta cut my nails, so I think I should be okay that day. Yeah, we're okay for next Sunday, but next whatever today is, Wednesday, Tuesday.